It's time for the Nasty Nathaniel and Bob Show.
The dorm that I ended up sleeping in was Dorm 8. And Dorm 8 is home of the Bahala Na gang. It's a big gang in the Philippines. And one of the leaders, a big shot in that gang, whom I ended up becoming friendly with, went to the deputy warden and asked him if I could spend the night. And so it was kind of done officially, but unofficially. And I didn't leave until about 4:30 the next afternoon. I slept there, ate with him, showered there, and it was a great time. But at some point I realized that, oh shit, I didn't get searched. I got my camera with me. And so I asked the inmates, I said, can we make a little video? Basically, they said, yeah, you can shoot a video. So I shot a video.
From Hollywood, Nasty Nathaniel.
All right.
And from Des Moines, I'll be playing the part of Bob.
Yeah, I remember one time having dinner with Joe Rogan, and he was talking about how you were a major influence, in his broadcasting career.
Oh, he's spouting off again, huh?
All right.
Old Joe. He was quite the little groupie when I was getting started.
He's one of those that I had never heard of him before, and because, people were saying, oh, you didn't know he was a prize fighter? I'm like, no, because I'm not really into that. And I just know I liked his show. And, he did a lot of stuff on Scientology. Like he's had Leah Remini on his show. He's had Ron Miscavige. David Miscavige is the leader's father, the one who escaped and wrote a book and all that great stuff. He's been on his show before. And Louis Theroux, who did the documentary for the BBC, My Scientology movie, So he's had, and plus he's talked to other people about Scientology, so he's done a lot of reporting on Scientology, and plus he's had like a lot of rock stars like Paul Stanley from Kiss and people that I like, and I like his format. I like he's not he's just very he's a very natural entertainer. I guess that's the way I'd put it, for lack of a better way of putting it.
Circle back to Nasty Nathaniel, the entertainer, the auditor, the interviewee. I know you've been on television interviews. You acted in a thing called Frederick Dracula.
Well, Frederick Dracula was actually a character I played in a show called Shaka Shakedown, which was on Pacific Network TV in Hawaii. Yeah, the show was Shaka Shakedown. Well, originally I was a part of what was called the No Act Crew. And there's actually a fan page on Facebook that's still up. That was one of the characters I played. And originally, No Act, we were like a comedy crew in Hawaii. And we were supposed to have our own show. And then at the last minute, well, not literally the last minute, but Pacific Network cut it. And they decided, okay, well, the show's not going to be called No Act anymore. It's going to be called Shaka Shakedown. And it's going to feature Hawaii's talent. And it would have, so we were stripped down to just, we would have one of our skits in every episode. So instead of having our own show once a week, it would be, we would have a little segment in every show. So basically, we went from being a pie to just a piece of pie.
Okay, so how did Frederick Dracula get thought up? Was that your invention, or did somebody suggest it?
Well, it was my invention. And I used to write when I was away in California's happy fun place. I used to entertain myself by writing these short stories. I called them my Neutronia cases. And, it was like, I referred to it as fictional true crime. Fictional meaning obviously it comes from my imagination, but I would write them as if, I was Joseph Wamba or Vincent Bugliosi writing, covering a case. I tried to write them as if they were real true crime cases. And I wrote one about it was a porn star, a guy who was a porn star who dressed up as like a Dracula, and then he ended up being, charged with murder. And, there's a whole nother backstory behind that, but he was known in his porn name was the Dick of Dracula. And so obviously I knew that the powers that be at the TV station wouldn't go for Dick of Dracula. So I made it Frederick, like the Dick of Dracula.
Okay, and so you did do some episodes on TV. What I've seen of Frederick Dracula was the on the street things, and you would interact with the public, and it was kind of funny. Did it go deeper than that, or was there more to the character?
Well, yeah, there was because it was we shot a bunch of scenes, and of course, being naive, I mean, I thought they were all going to be in the show, and the only scene is the one that you saw that they used of Frederick Dracula in the show that appeared on TV was the episode Frederick Dracula Goes to the North Shore. I went to Matsumoto Shaved Ice, excuse me, yeah, in Haleiwa Town, and did that. I had the blood flavored shaved ice, which was just cherry shaved ice, but and yeah, so that was the only. But we shot a bunch of other ones that are on the channel. The one of the producers of the show, he put them on his channel, and so that's where those, the scene that was in the show plus the other ones that we shot that didn't make it in the show, along with some of the other characters like Vegetable Man and Foxy Frankie and Elvis the meteorologist and all that goofy fun stuff.
Okay. Okay, so that's the Dracula character. Did the Scientology, and I'm going to call it a fascination for lack of a better term, but did that come after, or when did that come to play?
Oh yeah, that came much later. I mean, that was already. I mean, those scenes that we were shooting for that show was like 2010 into early 2001. That was way pre cop watching, way pre auditing, and then let's see. I didn't start getting interested in Scientology until I had already moved to California. I went in early 2016. I got, and this kind of ties in with the old TV show. One of the producers of that TV show, who was actually ended up becoming a really good friend of mine, he invited me to meet him in the Philippines. He wanted to do this documentary that Riot was going to sponsor. Riot's kind of like Vice. I mean, if you look them up on Facebook, they got like 1 million something followers, and they do like Vice kind of stuff. Anyways, they wanted him to make a documentary, and it was going to be focused on like strange and unusual aspects of Filipino culture. And obviously, because I had spent so much time in the Philippines, he had spent practically no time in the Philippines, and he knew I had a lot of contacts and that. And so he was like, invited me to come to the Philippines, and we were going to make this documentary. Long story short, the documentary never happened. I mean, the only thing that was ever published that's even out there is there's a trailer on YouTube that he put on his channel for it, but it never materialized, and me and him ended up having a big falling out, and so nothing ever came of it. But from like February of 2016 to June of 2016, so we're talking like a 4-month period, I was over there, and we didn't shoot footage for that whole time, and he left after like I think a month, and then I just stayed over there because I mean I had a family that I stayed with. So but it wasn't until I came back from the Philippines, and I came back to the world, so to speak, and saw Going Clear, saw the HBO documentary that had came out like 2 years previously, and just got hooked on it. And then I linked up with the Angry Gay Pope, and so I started reporting on Scientology about, I want to say, like towards the end of 2016, like October 2016. Actually, to be honest with you, the first audit that I ever did with any other auditors, and the two auditors that I met up with were High Desert Community Watch and California Guardian. The first audit that I ever did with them, or with any other auditors, period, was the Scientology Big Blue complex in East Hollywood, and that was in October of 2016, and the rest is Scientollywood history.
Scientollywood. Okay, well, that's interesting. Okay, and so you learned an awful lot about Scientology. I don't know if we went in chronological order, we would go back to Philippines and talk about the prison visit. You didn't have a stay in prison. You had a visit in prison. Do you want to talk about that briefly and then come back to Scientology, or do you want to come back to that later on?
Well, let me take a quick sip of my drink real quick, and then we can dive right into it. The Filipino jail, it was the Manila City Jail, which is in the city of Manila proper, because you have Metro Manila, which, includes, it's referred to as the National Capital Region, NCR, kind of like DC, it's and so the city of Manila, Quezon City, Makati, Pasig, those are all part of the greater Metro Manila area. And the Manila City Jail used to be the old Bilibid prison, which was, it was used, like back when the Spanish were there, and then the Japanese used it as a POW camp, and it's had a lot of different uses. And then in the 1960s, the city of Manila took it over and used it as the city jail, which it's a pre-trial, holding facility for people arrested in the city of Manila that are awaiting trial on a variety of offenses, same kind of system that we have here, And I had done a number of events there. Like I had done some motivational speeches, and I sponsored a Miss Gay beauty pageant. And so I knew people that worked there. And I was invited. I remember one day I got a text message from one of the inmate welfare officers, and she said, "Hey, we're all the dorms are doing a dance competition today. You want to be on the judging panel?" And I was like, "Yeah, I got nothing else to do but walk around in Manila and get drunk." So I went over there and showed up at the jail with my camera in my little carrying bag. And, I always carry it around with me just in case I see something that catches my eye, or maybe some police activity or whatever. And one of the guards that was coming on duty recognized me. And he said, "Hey, Nathaniel, are you here for the dance competition?" I said, "Yeah," and he said, "Oh, well, just come in with me so you don't have to wait." And so I went through the staff entrance where the jailers go in and out. And so I didn't get searched, didn't have to leave my ID up at the front like you normally would, so I went in there with my phone and my Canon Vixia handheld camcorder. And so we did the competition. This was about 3:30 in the afternoon. It ended, and I basically asked if I could spend the night, because we stayed kind of late. We went into the officers' quarters and we were drinking wine and talking, and then everybody was leaving and nobody told me to leave. I ended up getting to stay there. I just went back in the dorm, and I found out that I know I'm trying not to make it too complicated, but basically one of the dorm that I ended up sleeping in was dorm 8. And dorm 8 is home of the Bahala Na gang. It's a big gang in the Philippines. And one of the leaders, a big shot in that gang, whom I ended up becoming friendly with, basically he went to the deputy warden and asked him if I could spend the night. And so it was kind of done officially, but unofficially, And, I remember a couple inmates came and fetched me and said, "Come on." And we went back in the dorm. And I didn't leave until about 4:30 the next afternoon. Slept there, ate with them, showered there, and it was a great time. But at some point I realized that, oh shit, I didn't get searched. I got my camera with me. And so I asked the inmates, I said, can we make a little video? And one of them went and asked, one of the big shots there, like here in like prisons in the US, typically like, leaders or shot callers or whatnot are referred to as like tank boss or shot caller, or so-and-so's got the keys to the car. Well, there they call it the mayor. So every dorm has a mayor, and the mayor's like the shot caller. So they went and asked him, and then he went and asked, the big leader. And then basically they said, yeah, you can shoot a video. So I shot a video, and that's what you see in the that I published.
I think it's absolutely fascinating that you have access to the lingo. You understand what goes on inside these places, and you can talk at length about that. Now, you didn't have any credentials on you, did you?
No, none whatsoever. I was just a goofy white guy with tattoos and I didn't even have my first Parker Osmond tattoo yet. And I just you know, it was, I mean, really, it really is that simple. I just asked if I could do this. And before you know it, like I said, a couple of inmates are coming to fetch me, and they're saying, come on, let's go. You know, it's kind of, like I said, it definitely wasn't official. Like, I didn't get approval from the BJMP, which is Bureau of Jail Management and Penology. They're the agencies that run all the city jails and like pretrial facilities throughout the country, not just in Manila, but throughout the country. And so I didn't get any kind of official approval to do it. It's just basically the deputy warden at the time, who I actually sat next to at the dance competition, you know, when they were holding it. He okayed it and said, yeah, you can do it, you know, or he told the big gang leader, you can, you know, yeah, he can do it, but just kind of like, because you gotta, like, something that people got to realize too, and anybody who's seen those videos, there's a part 2 and a part 1 and a part 2. Anybody that's watched those, you know, there's no guards back in there. I mean, there's guards at the gate, there's guards in the towers, but there's no guards like walking around in those dorms, you know, like, it's not like here where, you know, where you're constantly under surveillance. There's nothing like that there. There's no cameras. There's no, you know, it was just, so basically for all intents and purposes, I mean, the only time a guard would ever walk through was when they would do count. You know, a guard would walk in and, like, I don't even know if he was really even counting everybody. He would just kind of walk in and look around and then leave. I mean, that was it.
You had not only the blessing of the assistant warden and some of the prison staff, but the prisoners themselves, which I think is fascinating, that they accepted you so well. They not only allowed you to do this, but they encouraged you to.
Yeah, and that's one of the things. And this doesn't just tie into the Manila City Jail. And then, like I said, you know, I was there for 4 months in 2016. And then I left. I didn't go back again until like late 2017. And then when I went back then, by that point, I was already an auditor and I had gotten into this, you know, movement and all that. So when I went back in like late 2017, I thought, you know, maybe I should try doing some audits over here. You know, I thought that would be something different because I'm always trying to think of goofy, different, crazy, wacky things to do. And, you know, I looked into it, and the Philippines, just like, you know, you know, Canada has their own version of the First Amendment. They have the Canadian Charter of Rights. You can ask Canadian Rights Media about that. You know, the Philippines has their own version of the First Amendment. And I even went as far as, I mean, I reached out to the Philippine consulate in Los Angeles. And basically the response that I got was, yeah, public photography in open spaces is it's fair game. And so I decided to kind of test that out. I mean, I have a whole playlist on my channel. I think it's titled like Auditing Philippines, where I have some cop watches, I have some audits, and I've been back like 3 times since. And every time I've gone there, I've done the last time I was there was for my birthday, which was last May of 2019. The reason I'm bringing this up is because the responses that I would get from people, with the exception of a few, like one time this female security guard got kind of crabby with me, but other than that, for the most part, most of them, I mean, they're all passes. I mean, it's not like here where you whip out a camera and you point it at someone and people are like, what are you doing? Why are you filming me? We're over there. It's like people go out of their way to try to get on camera. They want to have their picture taken. It's just, maybe I'm not describing it that well, but it's the total opposite. And it's always fascinated me. And that's why, like, when I went on TV the last time I was there, I said, it's just fascinating to me how the Filipinos that people are so much more accepting of cameras. We're here in the United States. It seems like we're still kind of a little bit backwards as far as, like, you know, I don't feel that people should freak out when they see a camera, because especially in this day and age where cameras are everywhere. Over there, it's the total opposite.
Well, tell me this. Do you think any of it had to do with the fact that you were a foreigner, that you were from the U.S., that you were of the Western culture, and maybe there's a little bit of I don't know, fascination with that? Or do you think that one of their fellow Filipinos would have been as well accepted as you?
Well, legendary Bob, that's actually a great point because one of my friends was actually, who knows what I do and follows me and stuff. He actually pointed that out. He told me, he said, I forget exactly how he worded it, but he basically said something to the effect of, he said, now, he believed that it's because you're white, and they probably just figure you're a tourist or maybe you're a journalist or something like that. So that's why they're not hassling you. But he said, like, if you were me being like Filipino, he said that'd be a completely different story. I mean, you'd get hassled. Now, obviously, I'm not Filipino, so I don't know if that would be the case. I will say this: I have most of the audits and stuff that I did over there. Most of the filming, that kind of stuff that I did, I was by myself. I mean, as far as like I said, audits or like filming police or Manila City Jail, that kind of goofy stuff. But there was one audit that I did over there. It was a Philippine Navy base, not one of our naval, but actually the Philippine Navy. I did one of their, there was a base there, and I just stumbled across it. I actually went on a date with a guy that I met on Tinder, and I met up with him in Malate, which is a part of Manila. And so we were walking down Rojas Boulevard, which runs right along the water, right, Manila Bay. And we went to some bar and we ordered a couple of drinks, and we're just sitting there, enjoying our cocktails. And he, I was telling him about what I do, and he was asking questions, and he points to the Philippine Navy base. He's like, well, there's that naval base over there. He's like, and I said, hey, let's go audit it. And he said, really? And he's like, you can do that? And I said, well, shit, of course we can, So we finished our drinks and left and walked over there. And what I did was I gave him an extra phone that I had, and I turned the camera on. I said, now just hold it up and just, just film, just follow me, and he went on an audit. So basically this date, hookup, whatever you want to call it, I ended up taking this dude with me on an audit, and he's Filipino, we pulled it off. So, but yeah, no, that's a good question. I think if your average Filipino citizen, if your average Filipino national tried doing that kind of stuff, yeah, it might be a different story.
Let's move back to the U.S. You're now interested in Scientology. Leah Remini and the podcasts that she's been on and her documentary special, multi-series, that sort of popularized the Scientology debate. Tell me how you got interested in kind of the inner workings of Scientology.
Well, like I said, I saw Going Clear, the documentary. That's like a 2-hour HBO documentary. That came out 2014. So by the time I saw it, it was already a couple years old. And that's what got me into it. And then if I get really interested in something, whether it's a movie or a rock band or, Lemonade, whatever it is, I really dive into it, and I try to learn as much about it as I can, and with everything. So that's what I did with Scientology. And one of my good friends back in Hawaii, he mentioned the Angry Gay Pope. He said, hey, have you watched the Angry Gay Pope? And I said, no. And he said, check out his channel. It's called Angry Gay Pope. So I did watch some of the videos and was like, whoa. And that took it to another level, because unlike, documentary type stuff where it's more, I don't want to say it's scripted, but it's a lot, definitely they're showing you what they want you to see. Watching Angry Gay Pope's very raw videos where, he's interacting with the security guards and he's yelling at them and getting really like up close in person with them. I decided to reach out to him. And then he was basically like, let's go protest together. And I remember the first time we protested was Guy Fawkes Day, which is November 5th, 2016. We basically walked the boulevard. We started at the Author Services building, which is near Hollywood and La Brea, and then we hit the Info Center. We went to the Hollywood Guarantee building, which is like the Scientology Death Star, and then we made our way over to Big Blue. Going out with him, seeing how he would interact with them, and because I'd been seen with them, then they started like following me, and obviously they were trying to find out who I was. I would love to do a public records request on my OSA file that Scientology has on me, but I don't think that'll ever happen. But yeah, it was just the more I dived into it, the more I started reading books and interacting with ex-Scientologists, public Scientologists, and people that had been in the Sea Org. And that mixed with my own personal experiences, the weirder it got, the more interested I became. Even if I'm just auditing some random building somewhere and wherever. I like to learn about these places, like, oh, it was opened in 1926 and this happened here and blah, 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 blah. I've just always been that kind of way. It's the same with Scientology, and I'm always learning new things. Every book that I read, I learn something. And like I said, I'll reach out to these people and I've talked to them. We have a thing which are called SP parties, which stands for suppressive person. Those are like enemies of Scientology. Every year they hold SP parties where, it's mostly ex-Scientologists, but also like critics, people like me and the Pope and Tony Ortega. And, we go, and it's really neat to interact with these people and hear their stories. And it's fascinating.
Do you have a strong opinion about, Scientology is evil, or do you have any really strong negative views? Is it more of a curiosity to you?
Well, in the beginning, it was more just a curiosity, but now, no, I have very strong opinions on it. And it's a very evil organization. I mean, it's very abusive. And that's the thing, like people, whether they watch one of my Scientology audits or they watch, maybe a video from the angry gay Pope or whatnot, they think, oh, well, they have freedom of religion and da da da, and you should, people can believe what they want and you should leave them alone or da da da. What they don't understand is that we're not protesting what they believe. I mean, if they want to believe that Lord Xenu blew them up in a volcano 75 million years ago, that's fine. People can believe whatever they want to believe. I mean, personally, I think, Christianity's got a lot of like wacky stuff in it that, this guy, was, died and was buried and then rose from the grave 3 days later. And, hey, whatever. People can believe what, as long as they're not hurting other people, have at it. So with Scientology, it's not what they believe. It's the abuse. It's the fact that they scam people out of money, that they hold people against their will, that that they tear families apart. They've ruined a lot of people's lives. They really, really have. So yeah, I'm very. I think that and it's starting to happen. It's a slow process, but our law enforcement really needs to come down on them because they are a very abusive organization.
Are there some law enforcement people that are Scientologist friendly, Scientologists themselves, that should concern all of us?
Well, yeah. And I mean, like Tony Ortega from the Underground Bunker. I mean, Tony Ortega is one of the top Scientology journalists. I mean, he used to be the chief editor for the Village Voice, and now he just, now he's full-time Scientology. But he did an article about a video I shot. I mean, it's up there. I mean, you could search my channel. I think it's titled, well, actually, I know it's titled. It's Riverside. If you go to Nasty Nathaniel, it's titled Riverside County Sheriff's Deputy Defends Scientology. And it was just a clip from the First Amendment audit that me and California Guardian did at Gold Base. First time I actually ever went to Gold Base. This was March of 2017. And but I put up a little like minute and a half video where this deputy was defending Scientology. And one of the things that he said was, whatever they want to do behind the gates, I don't care. That's not my business. I don't care if there's people being held against their will. I don't care if there's people being abused. Like, they can do whatever they want. Like, would he say the same thing about a house that was, somebody that was running a child prostitution ring? Well, whatever they do behind closed doors, that's not my business. I mean, I look at it the same way, whether it's happening out in the open or it's happening behind closed doors or behind closed gates or whatever. It's still criminal activity.
The religious topic itself, I mean, that's a mixed bag. So I was kind of curious on your take of Scientology. And there's Mormonism, Christianity. Everybody's got their own take on, whether or not it's real. But I think I get a sense that it's the compulsory aspect of Scientology that gets under your skin.
There's the way that they treat photographers, or used to. I mean, it's kind of different now. Now they know what we're doing, so they pretty much leave us alone. But I mean, the way that they used to treat people that would show up with cameras, like When I first started doing actual, like, I mean, I don't mean just protesting, but doing like actual First Amendment audits of Scientology orgs, no one had audited Scientology before. I mean, there was no SGB News First. There was no Furry Potato. There wasn't all these other people that came out of the woodwork and started, auditing Scientology orgs in their own city or wherever. So it was something new, and for one, they didn't know who I was. I mean, they eventually obviously found out, but and two, they didn't know what I was doing. You know what I mean? It was a new thing, just somebody showing up there, not holding a sign, not wearing an anonymous mask, not like doing a traditional protest, that was just filming their activities, and it was, their reactions were much different. I mean, if you watch those early Scientology audits that I did, the reactions compared to what would come later was totally different. But, in addition to that, the way that they would treat, people like us, the way they treat like ex-members or anybody that writes critically of them. Like, I remember like Tony Ortega talking about how, they were threatening his mom, trying to get him to stop. My good friend Stephen Mango, I mean, he has a channel, Mangotology. He's an ex-Scientologist. He was a public Scientologist. I mean, they poisoned his dog. I mean, and this is stuff that's been documented. This is not one isolated incident like, oh, so-and-so said this or whatnot. This is stuff that's been documented. God, not even a year ago, there was a girl that when she tried to leave the Sea Org, I mean, they blocked her from leaving and tried to like physically prevent her from leaving. And eventually she got out, but she actually went as far as she filed a report with the Hollywood division of the Los Angeles Police Department. And so this kind of stuff has been documented. This is not just like, oh, well, there's no evidence of it. Well, there is evidence of it, and it's out there.
So there's actual police reports and restraining orders and things like that filed.
Oh yes, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a big case going on right now, and in court, there's a big lawsuit going on, and they're trying. Well, recently, I mean, the judge ordered that it be sent back. They do arbitration within Scientology. I mean, it's going to be a long, drawn out process. Some former Scientologists are suing the church. Who knows? They might win. I mean, the problem that they're having right now is they're trying to get David Miscavige, the leader. They're trying to get him deposed, and they're trying to get him subpoenaed, and that's easier said than done. So, but yeah, I mean, it's and not only that too, not only just the lawsuits, but I mean, their membership is dwindling. I mean, the most recent reports that have come out from like people that were like deep in the Sea Org that have left have said that worldwide there's less than 20,000 members worldwide. I mean, it's funny because their website, if you go to Scientology.org, and then it advertises them as being the world's fastest growing religion, which is a flat out fucking lie. I mean, really what it should say is the world's fastest shrinking religion.
So there's some famous people that are in there. Vinny Barbarino, he's in there. You can rattle off a half a dozen probably really easily.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, and you bring up another good point. I mean, and that's one of the things people say, like, well, God, if their numbers are so long, how do they still manage to thrive? And here's the thing. Well, there's a couple different reasons. For one, they have a huge real estate empire. I mean, just in Los Angeles alone, they own about $400 million worth of real estate. I mean, you can look it up. I mean, they have some beautiful properties too. I mean, I'll give them that. But, as far as their numbers, I mean, they do still have some big celebrity names. I mean, obviously the most recognizable names are people like Tom Cruise, John Travolta, Kirstie Alley. And then they have some other celebrities like, Giovanni Ribisi. He's a Scientologist. I mean, Isaac Hayes, who's, he's no longer with us. He was a Scientologist. They still have some big, Erica Christensen. Remember, she was in that movie, Traffic. I think it came out in 2001. But she's done other stuff. She's a Scientologist. So they still have some big names in Hollywood. And they also still have some big donors, people that donate, hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars to that organization. So it's those kind of things that's still keeping them afloat.
Catherine Bell was on the Jag. She was one of the co-stars. Isaac Hayes, you mentioned. Gary Imhoff, Eric Christensen, Nancy Cartwright. There's just a huge list of names. Greta Van Susteren. So yeah, a lot of celebrity names. So that's how they recruit people, right?
Well, yeah, because a big, a big celebrity name. It's kind of, what it kind of makes me think of those commercials for those life insurance policies that you'd see on TV. They were almost kind of like borderline infomercials where you'd see somebody like, Betty White, talking about, American Life is the way to go for only such and such a month. You can get the protection you need, and it's a lot of them are just shams, but they see somebody like Betty White and they think, oh, well, if Betty White says this is a good thing, then it must be a good thing. Let's sign up, So yeah, it's kind of like that. Yeah.
Well, here's something that's notable about what you do. You're not in the shadows. I can envision an investigative journalist sort of being secretive about his recording or her recording of the goings on in Scientology. You go right out in the open, public sidewalks, and you whip out your camera and you start filming. So that's, I think, probably a little different than what we might have traditionally seen.
Like the angry gay Pope, I mean, he started out doing infiltrations. And then later on, once I met him and got to know him, we did some infiltrations together. And infiltrations are interesting because that's where you go in and you secretly record. I think, he did, like back in 2010, he infiltrated the newly opened Pasadena Ideal Org. And he also, and then me and him together, we infiltrated the two of their Inglewood properties, their Ideal Org and their big community center. Those are on his channel. If you search Angry Gay Pope, you'll find them. The infiltrations, they're interesting and they're fun. I forgot to mention too, when me and Pink Camera Magic, the lovely Miss Pink Camera Magic, when we drove from Chicago up to Detroit, we went there because they had just opened a brand new Ideal Org. It hadn't even been open a month. Our plan was just, well, let's just audit it, and it's brand new. And obviously too, unlike in LA where they all know me by face, there, they don't know us. So, maybe we can really kind of test out our right to record, see how they react to it. And they invited us in and no one told us to shut our cameras off. Now I had my body cam going, the GoPro, and there's a flashing light that indicates it's on, and she had her phone on like a little, pogo stick or whatever, and she was walking up to things. Basically what I'm trying to say is they had to have known that we were recording. Now if that was in LA, there's absolutely no way that we ever would have been able to pull that off. But there we went in and we recorded the whole tour, from the sidewalk to going in to leaving and going back out on the sidewalk again.
I think it's really interesting that they let you in and you were able to record inside. Clearly, those people didn't know who you were. But one last question on Scientology, then we can move on. Any death threats?
No, not death threats per se. Like I said, in the early days, I've been followed. I've been accosted at like Union Station and I've gotten like weird phone calls in the middle of the night, stuff like that. Mild, I guess you could say kind of mild harassment. Now I will say, Pope has gotten some threats of violence and things like that. Like, well, I'll give you an example. One of the things that they're known for doing is, especially if it's like, if there's an event going on where they know there's going to be protesters, where they know like people like myself and the Pope are going to show up, what they'll do is they'll hire these like, we refer to them as paid goons. And they're basically people that they're kind of like, thuggish kind of guys that will just kind of hang around. And when we show up, they'll start kind of trying to bully us. I've experienced a lot of that. That's almost kind of like a guarantee. And it's just really random. You'll show up and there'll just be some kind of like cholo looking guy just kind of hanging out, or some random biker or whatever that'll just come up and start getting in our face and say that he's going to, smash our camera or, mess us up or whatnot. And they do that to try to discourage people from showing up. Like there's one video in particular, this is on Pope's Angry Pope's channel. I think it's titled cult goon tries to ruin Star Wars premiere. And this was like, I want to believe like 4.5, 5 years ago. Pope went to the info center by himself, and they had this. I mean, I don't know if he was a skinhead or what. I mean, he looked like a skinhead, but this guy started giving him a hard time, and actually was like following him around Hollywood Boulevard. And the guy, it didn't stop until, they ran into there was a couple of LAPD, and the guy finally, backed off. But this guy was like saying he was going to, beat the living, out of Pope. And so they do stuff like that. And like I said, I've experienced that too, where, some random goon will come out and start hassling me or whatnot. So they're known to do that.
Back in a moment, more Bob and Nasty.
And don't touch that remote. We'll be right back. All right.
Yes, I'm calling for Officer Joseph Bonkowski. I'm not calling about the video on YouTube. I know nothing about it. I know nothing about you grabbing a cell phone out of a young woman's hand and throwing it on the ground. But what I want to talk to you about is this. I got 2 words for you, Officer Bonkowski. Hippopotamus lotion. Officer Bonkowski, my name is Keikoa McClellan, and I run a company based out of Honolulu, Hawaii called Hippopotamus Lotion. Officer Bonkowski, I'm going to fly you to Honolulu, Hawaii, where our headquarters are, and I'm going to put you in all our ads. You know those ads on YouTube, like the video you appear in, where you've grabbed the cell phone out of that woman's hand and threw it on the ground? They say you can skip in 5 seconds. Well, you're going to be in those ads, Officer Bonkowski, because I think you got an amazing face and an amazing body. And so here's the deal. Listen closely and pay attention. I'm going to fly you to Honolulu, Hawaii. I'm going to pay you $5,000 a day, and we're going to put you in all our ads. We're going to start by throwing you into a room full of beautiful Polynesian men who are going to rub hippopotamus lotion all over that amazing Caucasian body of yours. So, Officer Bonkowski, you need to stop fucking around, and you need to call me back. Number's on the screen. I didn't block the call. I didn't dial *67 before I dialed this number. So all you gotta do is look at your caller ID and you can see my number. I don't need to give it to you. Just look at the caller ID. You'll see it right there. Remember, this is Keikoa McClellan of Hippopotamus Lotion. So call me back right now. Love you, baby. And stop harassing photographers.
You have a lot of interest in film and popular movies, and one time you found yourself in Laverne, California. You found an interesting, I'm going to call it a monument, but I know that it was a filming location for a very popular movie. Talk about that.
Yeah, The Graduate from 1967. I wonder how many people, for one, I don't know how many people are in here right now, but I mean, anybody that's either listening now or is going to listen to the video that you put up later. I mean, it's one of my favorite movies, The Graduate. Dustin Hoffman, young Dustin Hoffman who's just come back from college, ends up getting seduced by an older woman. And there's a scene, I mean, I could go on and on about the movie, but there's a scene at the end of the movie where, the daughter of the older woman that he was having the affair with, that he had actually ended up falling in love with. He fell in love with her daughter. She's getting married, and he's trying to stop the wedding, because he's in love with her and he wants her to go with him and not the guy that she's going to marry. And he shows up at this church, and now the scene is supposed to be set in Santa Barbara. I found out, after, thanks to the magic of the internet, that the church scene, the church that was supposed to be a church in Santa Barbara, is actually in Laverne. And I happened to be over in that area. I was working at the time, and I thought, well, I wasn't even planning of really auditing the place. I thought, I just want to take a couple of snapshots of it, and that was really it. But then once I got there, I thought, well, hell, why not do an audit? I mean, we're out public. I mean, just stand on the street and film it and see. I wasn't even sure if there'd be anybody there. Well, sure enough, there was someone there, and it was a lady who came and, invited me inside, and never once told me to shut the camera off. And she was more than happy to talk about the movie and so forth. So, yeah, that's it was the First United Methodist Church in Laverne. So anybody who's, likes that movie or is interested in that was where, but it was supposed to be Santa Barbara, but it's actually Laverne. And it's funny because she actually told me once about a group of tourists from the UK who had they had came to California, and they were huge fans in the movie, and they were doing a whole like video about the movie, and they actually went to Santa Barbara looking for that church. I'm surprised they didn't like do the research beforehand, but she said they didn't realize that the church was in Laverne until they got all the way to Santa Barbara, and I guess at some point somebody told them or something, and so then they end up having to turn around and drive back south and go down to Laverne, which is, probably like, I don't know, maybe 30 minutes east of LA City. So, I mean, it was, but yeah, no, it was a cool.
By the magic of the movies, we brought it to Laverne instead of Santa Barbara. What was the name of the church in the movie?
I believe it was the First Presbyterian Church. Yeah. There's a scene where he's in his like little red Alfa Romeo Spider convertible, and he shows up at a gas station. This is the late 60s, so there's no cell phones. Now he just whip out his smartphone and do it. But he uses the payphone at the gas station to call, and he's trying to find out where the wedding is being held at, and the person he talks to on the phone tells him the First Presbyterian Church, and he hangs up, and it's funny because you see the gas station attendant say like, "Hey, you need any gas?" And he drives off. Well, before he gets to the church, he runs out of gas, so he ends up jumping out of his car and just basically running to go over to the church. But it's actually it's a Methodist church.
I saw that video, and that lady was so nice and so accommodating, and I noticed on the right side of the church, there's no side door where Dustin went in. That was one of the interesting Easter eggs about the movie, juxtaposed with the actual shooting location.
No, that's right. You got a good memory, because that's true. There was that was actually a prop. As far as the little balcony area that overlooks the room where they do the services and stuff, that's all real. I mean, that church looks just like it did in the movie. I mean, looks, with the exception of, like I said, that little staircase was just a prop, but everything else is and she told me, she said that little balcony area up there, because when I went up there was like a crib and some like baby toys and things like that, and she told me that that's actually like the quiet room. That's where like the adults, during the actual service, they put their kids up there so that they don't cry and like interrupt the service. You know what I mean? So that's
sure, yeah, the quiet room. You bet. But it wasn't being used as a quiet room during the movie. Dustin Hoffman was up there on the windows banging and trying to get their attention down below.
Yeah, and another thing too about that is that I read that at the time the pastor who was the pastor during the filming of that movie, he did not want Dustin Hoffman banging on. He didn't want any banging on the glass, and so in the movie, the sound you hear, that was like added in. Dustin Hoffman, they said in reality, he was just very like barely touching the glass. Like, so he wasn't actually banging on the glass. Another thing too, and this was one thing that I haven't been able to find, and the lady the nice lady that was there, this is the one thing that she didn't know, that I was wondering why they chose Laverne, like why they chose that. And that's the one thing I've never been able to find out. But for whatever reason, they chose that church. The pastor of the church was actually very hesitant to go along with that. And the reason why is because of the subject matter of the movie. Like, they were very hesitant to be tied with a movie that had the kind of subject matter that they did, like, premarital sex and, adultery and all that stuff, which was so risque back then,
So he didn't want the Methodist Church to be embroiled in that kind of a controversy, and I don't blame him. It probably helped, though, that it was in the movie it was set as the First Presbyterian Church. It was in Santa Barbara, so that wouldn't draw people to necessarily think that it was in Laverne and was the Methodist Church.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm sure there's probably still a lot of people, like, I even remember telling my dear old mom about it, and she had no idea it was in Laverne. She always assumed it was Santa Barbara.
And wasn't there some cash that was involved too that might have greased the wheels a bit?
Oh yeah, it's online. I read. I mean, for the life of me, honestly, I can't recall, but they were paid a pretty decent amount, and that scene was shot over like 4 days. And they were paid so much. They were paid a decent amount per day of shooting. So I'm sure that was also a motivating factor. No, wait a minute. Churches don't like money. Oh, no.
Okay. Well, I can't think of any other questions that I want to bug you about today, but I certainly enjoy talking about all these topics with you, Nasty.
No, and great. And I think next time I think I'm going to have to pick our next episode. I think I'm going to have to pick your brain and we can dive into your legendary career in radio.
Well, there's certainly limited interest in that, but I'm happy to answer any questions. You know about everything I've ever done, so I've interviewed a few people that people might recognize. Been in the radio broadcasting business for 30 years, and there may be a thing or two that might be slightly interesting. I really enjoy the depth of your appreciation for not only movies, but the interest you've developed in Scientology and just the whole ball of wax. And you've really got a popular YouTube channel too, and I think people ought to take a look at that.
Yeah, I mean, I try to continue to upload interesting content, I mean, I try really hard to keep people interested, and that's one of the things that I've learned about that crazy business is, you gotta, if you want people to stick around, you gotta continue to put up interesting content, and that's what I strive to do.